Welcome to those who've joined us today, and thanks for taking the time. I'm pleased to have a nice group of panelists here today to talk about AI, really a cross-industry um, group. And I have one panelist who's, I think, in the process of joining, but I figure we should get started. Um, so with me today, I have Anand Patel, um, representing Ascend Partners. He's got a lot of experience in I'm going to let folks introduce themselves, but just very briefly, Anand has a healthcare background and more recently has been working for a while now in private equity. I'll let Anand speak in more detail momentarily. I also have David Helsby joining from Seattle, and has extensive experience in the video game industry, particularly as an animator, AI for a while himself. I should have um, I should have Ashley or Tony joining momentarily as well. Tony Tai from HyperDraft, um, and they are an automation service, particularly legal automation, sort of contract automation for various industries, including aerospace. And again, I'll let folks go into a little more detail on their backgrounds. And Yeah, with that, why don't we kick it off? Anand, do you want to introduce yourself and tell folks a little more about your background, particularly as relates to AI?
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Anand Patel. I'm a practicing, interventional radiologist, physician, and also serve as Chief of AI and Innovation for Ascend Partners. Ascend Partners is a New York-based growth private equity fund. We manage around 2 billion in assets. That spans around 10 portfolio companies across the country. Those are predominantly healthcare provider groups focused on value-based care. So I sit sort of at the intersection of clinical care, value-based care operations, and deploying AI into real-world workflows. So most of the time, I think about how we can move from like all the catchy AI stuff you see, in the news to actually safe into production and at scale. I'm based in Los Angeles, and thanks, Jeff. Yeah, appreciate it.
Great. Good to have you. David, your your turn, sir.
Yeah, I'm David Helsby. I'm a veteran of the video game industry. I've been doing that for about 22 years as an animator, a technical artist, modeler, um, and I've worked at companies like Riot and Bungie. Um, and yeah, I've been playing around with AI for a couple years now, and it's really cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to like kind of dig through all of it and see what's actually practical and what's hype.
Totally. And I'll interject with a little a note when I spoke to folks and mentioned that I'd be doing something on AI, they said, what will you be talking about?
Mhm.
And I had some ideas, but honestly, um, it's a tough question because it also is changing so, month to month and week to week. It's obviously it's very dynamic. And then, AI itself can mean so many things. I thought, and some of of course, our clients I think, would be interested at some point in us talking more about how AI infects and affects investments or investment opportunities. And I think that's an interesting subject. But meanwhile, I thought we would bring it kind of more down to earth and have, folks who can talk about how it's playing out in their respective industries. So maybe jumping right into, high level question, how David, let's keep going. Like how is it disrupting your sector? And um, a tough question first. How is it disrupting the video game sector? Among other sectors.
Well, I think, we're really being presented with a lot of really useful tools and big promises. And of course, we want to, if you have a company or if you're making anything, you want to make sure you want to like try to make it as best you can, but you also want to make sure that it is you can do it fast
Mhm.
and in budget. And so, I think that anybody who's making anything has to like kind of to take a look at this and be like, hey, is this a solution to my problem? And that I think is something that like actually like spans all industries, when it comes to AI. It's like how is this promise and of this new technology and how, what am I being presented with that we can actually use? And that presents a lot of questions. There's a lot of things on the horizon that look really interesting. We see things every day. I just saw the NVIDIA conference where they showed some fantastic new technology. And I think that simply like even if it's not ready, seeing this stuff on the horizon has it has no there's no choice but for it to be disruptive to any industry that particular tool may touch. I think like last year, I think we all remember the story where Tyler Perry was going to be investing several $billion into a post-production structure, and then decided once he saw Sora that he was going to, pull back for a minute and decide,
Mm,
how he was going to allocate his funds for that type of work.
totally. Yeah, it's certainly there is massive disruption, and I thought about making numerous jokes, including, sort of asking live, how long will it take AI to replace me? How much time do I have? And put that into Claude or another AI tool. But let's get back. We have Tony Tai on from HyperDraft. Tony, thanks for making the time today. Um, and if you don't mind, just would you give a brief introduction and then we'll kind of, jump back on some Q&A.
Yeah, sorry for being tardy, guys.
No
I'm
problem.
just the fun of travel delays today.
Oh,
Yeah, so Tony Tai, CEO of HyperDraft. My background's in machine learning before it was cool, and then went to law school and was a practicing attorney for 10 plus years. Founded HyperDraft a few years ago, just seeing a gap in the market. With the lack of tooling for legal professionals and in the legal field, and have been hitting the pavement ever since. So I would say we were pre-hype life cycle. So it's kind of interesting to kind of see us transition in and into the what people perceive as an AI bubble. So
And I was trying to think about the best way to, kind of categorize each of you or, compare and contrast. It's interesting that a AI driven company, whereas perhaps, and Anand and David, correct me if I'm wrong, um, you all are actively incorporating AI into what you do in your respective industries, but maybe a little different in that sense. I know you're both steeped in AI. Is that a fair characterization? Uh,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Um, so Tony, that's maybe we could boil it down a little bit since we have some folks that are, on online, some of whom are very technical and others, less so, or uh, and myself included, liberal arts major, MBA, and I have a fair amount of clients in tech, but I usually joke I can barely screw in a light bulb. So it's fun for me to educate myself, through you all and other smart folks. So to that end, can you speak to a little bit like on a practical, maybe day-to-day level of what Hyperdraft is doing, uh, for the sorts of obviously I know there's plenty of confidentiality, but at a high level, what are you doing for general counsels out there and clients?
yeah, I mean, on our end, we try to keep it pretty simple. So what we do is we digitize workflows. So if there's an existing process, let's say a loan generation process, we go in, we evaluate what's been done to date, the manual process, and then just slowly automate piece by piece. And that's for many different reasons. But first of which is to ease users into using the tech. Um, because we could easily just automate the full process, but then that would lack transparency for the users, and they would be unable to validate kind of the data in, data out, and their QA QC of processes. So really what we do is on the consultative side, we map out processes and then we start to digitize them with the tooling that we've built over the last decade. Um, you know, we, we're kind of split on the number of customers that come to us saying, "Hey, I want to use AI," with zero understanding of need. And then the other split of customers that come to us and say, "Hey, we don't know exactly what you do. Um, we don't really care that much about AI, but we do want to automate our processes. How can you help?" And we usually have way more success in that second bucket rather than the first bucket, who just thinks that the tooling that we built, or that tech term AI, is a silver bullet for all problems.
Right. That's helpful. Anand, similarly, if maybe you could break it down in a similar way in terms of how that plays out in your industry in healthcare. And my understanding from past conversations is a lot of it is geared towards, you know, the actuarial type of work that you all do as, sort of some of your portfolio companies have an insurance component, but maybe you can speak a little more to how the AI comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we've really honed in on our thesis is we believe in sort of like um, the data plus workflow plus basically creating customized software leads to durable enterprise value of our portfolio. So what I mean by that, um, most of our healthcare companies, like you said, are patients and doctors. There's thousands of visits a day. Um, a layer on top of that is that many of our companies are acting like insurance companies, not just administering the care. So we're on full financial risk. So there's an entire operating model, but I think it's analogous to stuff even outside of healthcare, because if you really think about it, you have your business, there's business best practices, sort of the way the business should operate. And then there's the way that actually things are operating. So I sit, sort of in looking at how AI can enhance all of our operations medically, both on the back end where it doesn't even see patients to the front end. Um, and many of our processes are not optimized, broken. Um, and the way what we found is it's two reasons mainly. One, the softwares we have don't really meet the needs of the doctors and the back office. And they're sort of like the general idea of the kind of the general SaaS software. They're sort of a one size fits all. They're okay, but that in combination with the lack of data. So what I mean by data is like every patient's medical record, that all kind of company data, whether it's insurance data related stuff, having them all kind of sit in one place. And what AI has been able to do for us is if we can get all that data in one place, we can put an AI layer on top of it that can basically go to the end user, which a lot of times is somebody in the back office or the doctor, and say, "Hey, look, you now have a customized workflow. Your broken workflow is fixed now. You have a customized piece of software that we created with AI using your own data." And I mean, put simply, like doctors, like what we build for them is it's ChatGPT type of tool that sits on top of the entire medical record of all their patients. Last year, we processed over a trillion tokens of AI data by running through all of that through models like OpenAI and Claude and all of them, right? And so my goal is to kind of see how when we see things like on a personal level, we like, wow, we're blown away by like how Claude did something, wrote me an email or cleaned up my desktop or whatever. But then how do we get that tooling like at scale inside the companies and like fully baked in?
Mhm.
And so essentially our companies are starting to look a little bit more like software companies because we're building our own software everywhere. And that ultimately our thesis from PE is that itself will be an asset. That will be, instead of having like a Salesforce contract or whatever, a few years, like it'll be, you'll have your own custom CRM, custom EMR, custom whatever billing thing. And that actually will increase your enterprise value
Mhm.
compared, it's like another asset that you have. And so yeah, that's kind of where I sit in kind of the messy workflows of all these companies and understanding like, okay, which tools are the best to use to fix those problems.
Mm. And you touched on perhaps a topic of a good future webinar, which is, the impact of getting back to, what I said earlier, the impact of AI on software and, and on the landscape, and which we've seen. I'll put out my tiny disclaimer. This is not investment advice. We're just speaking for illustrative purposes, etc. But the impact of AI on software and which companies will be able to adapt and actually remain world-leading companies versus are they disrupted and then, ups more of the will make way for really purely AI driven companies. So that's
Yeah,
great. That's great.
just on that part,
Please.
I just find this such like a fun topic, because my background's in PE before I decided to go down this route. Uh,
Mhm.
and Anand, you probably have this same experience as well, like looking at portcos or looking at these companies, because often if there's an engineering team or some sort of software development team, you'll see engineers overestimate their abilities and underestimate levels of complexity. And I'm
Mhm.
gonna butcher this concept, but it's called like a Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you guys heard of that before?
Oh, yeah.
So the less you know, the more you kind of over index on your ability. Um, so we've even seen it in the market with, and non mention it, like Salesforce, right? The CRM aspect of it. Like, oh,
Mhm.
what do we use it for? If we just use it for a database, the problem is a lot of CTOs, a lot of engineers pick Salesforce as a back end database because it's safe. It's a safe call. They might have been sold the product. And then you might ask them, like, how much of the product do you use? And you're like, dude, 15%. And then they're like, well, why are we paying full premium for this? Um, and then it takes over time for people to realize, oh, actually, I don't want to have to manage database backups. Oh, I don't want to have to manage logging. Oh, I don't want to have to manage security, yada yada. And then there's these levels of complexity that you add on to the project and then you run the math backwards. You're like, actually should have just purchased that. That would have been way easier. We could have spent a little bit more time maybe learning that platform. Because like with a lot of professionals such as yourself, Jeff, like be good at what you do and do what you're good at, as opposed to kind of trying to go way too wide with areas which because of AI may be perceived as easier to accomplish than in reality.
Mm.
That's just my spiel on.
No, that's helpful. Very helpful. Um, you're you're all more technically oriented than I am, and that's good good insight. Um, Mr. Helsby, anything? It seemed like you might want to add something there. Not to put you on the spot, but I'll put you on the spot. If you
Um,
want to jump in on that. And you've sat on some different, I know some of these things may be sensitive, maybe you can't go into so much detail, but you've been around different, in the community talking about AI and the impact on your industry. So
Yeah,
Feel free to take it where you want to take it.
sure. I think that there's definitely a lot of fear that people are going to be replaced, and I don't know if that's incorrect. However, like I've always felt like, even when I was at the beginning of my career, I was always trying to build tools and scripts to make my job easier. Like and I was doing this like, 18 years ago. I was like, oh, I bet I can write this little script like in Maya, to make this process automatable. Like just because I wanted to be fast and I wanted to have more time to actually do creative work as opposed to like the repetitive work. And so I think AI and AI tools really, I really kind of connect with it because it's what I've always wanted to do. Um, I think that, from the standpoint of making art, I always felt like I mean, there's obviously a technical aspect, and the better technician you are, sometimes the better art you can make. However, it wasn't the technique that I was always proud of with the art that I would make. It was the ideas that I was able to like bring into creation and kind of be like, yeah, that was a cool idea that I was able to execute on. And so I think the idea of using AI to do this, it seems like the next logical step in producing and becoming more efficient in your skill set. I don't know how everybody feels about that. I know that's probably a little bit of a hot topic right now, but when I think about AI and I think about this stuff, this is kind of where it takes me.
Well, there's an interesting, you maybe think of there, there's a balance sometimes between art and science. Um, I like to say that, what we do, there's a bit of an art to it as well. It's not purely like algorithmic. Although, yeah, there's a case to be made for a lot of those things being, a lot of what we do being algorithmic or, um, science driven, et cetera. I think same for Anand and Tony, I speculate. But in your case, in the art side, it's a little different. And I wonder, I think like as pertains to movies, for instance, I think there's a fear that like I have as a layman, I think a lot of laymen do is we don't want everything to look totally perfect and totally CGI and AI created, And is it everything going to be, you know what I mean? There's a balance between we want very nice graphics. On the other hand, it's nice to know a human drew something and to preserve some human element in these creations.
I agree, but I do also think that the market will dictate.
Mhm.
I think if the art that AI makes is not good or looks too like, similar to everything else being created, people may reject it. But I think that's a good step in terms of like how AI is used and how it advances in that particular field.
Hmm.
The market will always like kind of dictate this technology and how it evolves. Um, I do believe that that we will and it will figure it out though. I don't know if you guys have seen this example of AI, but I remember watching this a few years ago. It was they had everybody know the game Breakout with the little paddle and you would like hit the ball and
Yeah,
break the
yeah, yeah.
blocks.
Mhm.
I remember like them showing them training this AI to play Breakout. And at the beginning, it was just kind of like it couldn't even hit the ball. It didn't even know how to use the paddle. And after something like 20 or 25 or 30,000 games, it had learned to play in this very advanced and like novel way of being able to beat the game like incredibly. And I kind of thought to myself, uh-oh, like
Mhm.
this
And
is
that was how
this
many
is
years ago? This is like
this is like 2 or 3
5, 10
years
years
ago.
ago. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was the
Um,
that was the AlphaGo documentary, right?
yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
But I was both like kind of frightened and both like kind of excited by it because I was just all I could think of is this like it was a very simple example of them showing like this thing will learn from its mistakes based on positive and negative reinforcement, and it will figure it out, you know? And like with the correct guidance and training, I think that even bad art being produced can be like quantified in some way and trained out of the model. Um, that's not going to like make a lot of artists happy when me saying that, but when I think about like kind of the end goal, it may take some time. But when you talk about faster and faster, chips and their ability to like run more and more computations, faster and faster, it's like we get to this almost level of accelerated evolution of this tool to be able to solve problems.
Nice. Yeah, scary. I mean, a little scary, but also that's helpful.
David, are you scared because you hold the like world record for breakout score, or
I would be. I would be very sad if I did. I mean, in terms of fear, it's like I think you just have to embrace this. I don't know if this is something I don't know if I believe truly in an AI bubble per se. Because I think go ahead, Johnny.
yeah, no, I find it so fascinating because on the AI coding tools, we're a few years ahead. So we're always like 1 or 2 years ahead of the rest, right? So like Copilot and what has amounted to ChatGPT existed for about 3 years before it went mainstream, like with ChatGPT and all that stuff. And originally it was very helpful for like autocomplete. Um, and then it started writing its own software, and then people would see it. And then, these days, all of our engineers uh, utilize it daily. In fact, like I would consider them slacking at their job if they weren't using it. However, we have a rule at our company, which is that no AI only coded gets pushed into the code base. Everybody must read um, the the code before it gets committed to the main branch. Um, and people ask us why, and I always tell them that like there's a sort of a ground truth issue that I think people are lacking, which is like, oh, what if I told someone to go build a car for me from scratch, right? And all I had to do was drive it. Great. That's fantastic. What if something went wrong with the car? Do I ask the AI to fix it? What if it probably doesn't know how to fix it because it built that in the first place? But two, like you need a mechanic, you need some human to go in and look at it. No blueprints, no idea, no ground truth as to how this was built. Um, like one of the like fun examples I have, and I think it's in gaming. And David, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't have much time for video games these days, but I want to say it was Fallout that had a massive like bug in it, and it wasn't a bug. It was an asset that had too many vertexes, right? Like
Yeah.
was it? It might have been one of those games. But after the game developers put in a lower polygon version of it, it like boosted performance by like 20%, something ridiculous. Um, when you use AI coding tools like that increases the probability of those types of errors like tenfold. And so we get massive more like volume and work product, but the quality, if you think about like the law of big numbers and how data quality works, like the bulk of these models are trained on the 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 bell curve of data. You will never get right side or tail end curves of data. That's why you see these massive AI labs. There's people behind that, like curating and reinforce using reinforcement learning. So especially with art, I expect that piece to not be replaced by AI. There might be AI assisted tooling, but that lets you execute on your mental vision faster, right? But that doesn't take away the creativity or the artwork. In my field, I don't get to be as creative, right? Like no one wants to be like, oh, Tony was, when a client comes to us and you're like, hey, why was that interest rate wrong on that $20 million loan? And I said, I just wanted to be creative. Like I just decided I'd increase the interest rate. That doesn't work in my field. So that, it just depends on also field. Like Anand sounds like, on the medical field, like nobody wants a misdiagnosis or like a bad chart because AI thought it was trying to be creative. Um, that's why I just all this talk of like, hey, we're gonna replace these professionals entirely in the coding world. They'll like, if they're being honest, they'll tell you like, actually, in about a year from now, we're gonna have to hire way more programmers to debug and clean up all the crap that's in there.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's my spiel on.
It's
Yeah,
funny because
that's
like sometimes, I write some Python, and I'll make tools or things like that. And one day I was like, man, I am too busy. I'm gonna just see if this LLM will like create this code for me. And so I did it, and I was like, oh, I think it's pretty good. You know what I mean? And I shipped it off to the supervisor to like review the code, and he's like, did you use ChatGPT to make this? And I was like, well, yeah. And he's like, yeah. He's like, this sucks. He's like, go back and do it again. Do it manually. He's like, it's not there yet. He's like, there's just he's and it's funny because I kind of laughed because I was like, okay, it was a good lesson for me because as you said, like these tools I think should be continue to be used by humans. Like there needs to be like caution against over automation of these tools because they will just make decisions, based on their training, based on a hallucination. And that's why every piece of content, every piece of code, it should be, it should be curated for the human operator, but not replace the human operator.
Hmm. Wow. Very helpful. Anand, anything you wanted to add to that?
I mean, I think it really depends on the use case, right? And I would argue that most of the use cases in corporate America or like a lot of the jobs in my opinion, revolve around document intelligence. And document intelligence is something that AI is very good at.
What does
Basically,
that what does that term mean? Document intelligence?
reading documents, reasoning from them, right? Referencing. We have something
Yep.
I coined it. It's the three R's: read, reference, and reason.
Mhm.
Uh, Rather, read, reason, and reference. So when you're doing it for a medical document, right? Most so like there's the decision making and all that stuff, which is sort of humans are yeah, they got to make decisions. But if a lot of those decisions are made from documents, basically reading a piece of paper of something, right, or reading a computer screen. And if you really looked at like a lot of workflows, right, it boils down to that. So if you can have AI read all of them very accurately, which really was not possible until very recently, right? I
Mhm.
mean, read every word. It doesn't matter. We have, for instance, doctors that do handwriting. Okay, so they're not even on electronic medical. They handwrite. They do it in Korean. They they do whatever, right? It's chicken scratch everywhere. It's completely unusable up until 1 year ago. And now we're over 95% accuracy on all those charts by having like AI first read, right? Read every document you have, then reasoning, right? So I think where a lot of the um, kind of more of the machine learning algorithms that I was working on with MRI scanners like 10, 15 years ago, they were great, but they didn't have the ability to reason. That's what large language models can do, right? Like
Mhm.
think more like a human. And there takes an art and a craft to that of prompting and picking the right model. And there's a lot there actually to optimize. But right, if you can get it to start thinking, right, like a doctor, like in this case, then I can read the Korean chicken scratch writing. I can have it translated. I can
No
think about
disrespect
it like,
to your Korean colleagues. That
no, he knows it is. We've tried to, and he said, I'm not changing it. And actually, this is a great use. This is how most use cases, I would boil like a lot of use cases in a lot of industries boil down to this. There's a suboptimal workflow. The software doesn't, the process doesn't meet the demand, right? Like the way the person wants to do it. And there's there's an inefficiency. So anyway, we said, okay, well, we don't have, forget it. We don't even want to change you to an EMR. We'll just give us
Yeah.
all this. Look, we have something for you. And so reasoning. And then, well, if I say that the patient has high blood pressure because I read it through, a doctor, people, you need referencing, right? You need to have that as the ground. So you need to be able to readily say, oh, it was in page 52 from that date, right? And like that's also complicated, but AI is
Mhm.
very good at those three things. And I think that gets the human then to a better decision faster, right? Like to make the final clinical decision. Again, it's not 100%, but it's getting very much there. Now there are things where like that last decision making when it comes to like automating workforce and jobs and everything, right? Like there are a lot of jobs where it's just about document intelligence, and then the final level of reasoning isn't all that much, and it's not also high consequence, right? Like a doctor could kill a patient. If a bank loan is wrong, it could lose millions and millions of dollars. Like so, there are a lot of jobs that I am worried about, but I actually think there are going to be a reskilling of the workforce, and just what we found internally too is like we have people like doing these kind of things, and first of all, they hate their job. They can't even get through all of it. It's not possible. So we go in and we bring in a solution like that, right? Like, hey, read all these handwritten charts, figure out what are the diseases. Like they're more than happy, and we're more than happy to put them onto the many, many other things that we have to do for them, right? And in
Mhm.
healthcare, there's no shortage of people that we need and things to do. And people are afraid when they hear this. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna," and I'm like, I've actually had conversations like, "Do you like actually changing the name of that file? Like all this stuff." They're like, "No, it's terrible." I said, "Yeah, we're gonna remove that. And we're gonna get you doing something better because you have way more potential than doing this, and we need you." So I think that it's really interesting. I think, but a lot of people just don't know that, and there's fear as a result of what's going to happen to my job. But I do think, I mean, Tony brought up an example of how it's going to create more software jobs in the end, and I think that's probably true. I mean, we have a very large infrastructure and cybersecurity team on our side that um, all the tools that I come up with and my team come up with on the front end, they have to go through all of that, and they're getting busier than ever, right, to put those into production, especially with healthcare security and HIPAA and everything. So the job will change though, right? Like we don't need, I don't like a front end software developer anymore though, because like they just don't understand the business well. But let us kind of give them like another analogy I often use is sort of a kitchen analogy. Like we're, you know, have the end user make the dish they want, like really to their taste, to their liking. Make
Mhm.
just one of them, and then you could give it to our production line chefs and cooks, and like they'll source everything. They'll make sure it's clean. They'll make sure you can actually make that dish like reliably hundreds of times, every night in a New York City restaurant, right? Like there's a big difference between that and like making one dish in your kitchen. So,
Mhm.
but I still want that kitchen dish. I really want that. That's what we're missing a lot. And so that's sort of where what we've seen as a transformation.
That's helpful. One note I'll just make for those who are online here is feel free. I should have a Q&A open, so if anyone has a burning question, feel free to send it through, and we'll try to leave some time to tackle at least a couple of those. Um, I know we do have clients in various time zones, so I think a number of folks will also will catch the replay. Okay, that's very helpful. I'm just trying to think if I'm the
Hey,
where I
Jeff.
stand. Am I a line cook or am I, a chef? No, just go on, Tony. Yes.
Yeah, Anand brought up like a really good point on this, on the like freeing up of time and training. And this is apropos of nothing, but the chicken scratch comment reminded me of like my first job, which is I worked for this like very famous attorney, and no one could decipher his comments in the documents. Like he'd write it, I'd bring it to him, I'd be like, dude, what does this say? And he's like, I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. But here's kind of the fascinating thing. That was probably the best job I ever had, because it taught me a great deal. Because it was this signal from this very well-established attorney that I should pay attention to something, right? How we interpret it, that was a like a coin flip. After a while, the the attorney was just like, I trust whatever you got. But it was interesting to me because this is one of the parts that I feared, we were coming to, but also with the advent of AI, we're running into even more so, which is the lack of training and the lack of intentionality and the lack of like just foundational knowledge. Um, you know, when I first studied computer science, like I didn't start with like a high level language. Like we started with how do we build computers, how these bits and bytes work, and then we worked our way up. And over the last decade, we saw a lot of like boot camp kids like go through and try to study programming in 2 weeks. But fundamentally, those people would very seldom last because they lacked all the foundational knowledge. Um, and so I'm curious from like David's perspective and Anand's perspective, like how do we work on training? Like, because I do think like, at least in my opinion, over the last decade, like we've kind of lost the narrative and the, I don't know, the pride around your craft. And with the introduction of AI, like, now you have to find and train people to use the AI. Like, how do you guys think about that problem?
I can take a shot at it first. We literally have, like, I just hired a team of almost 10 people who kind of, they're vibe coders, ultimately. That's what they are, right? And so,
And
sort of
I think most of us know what that means, but just tell folks what vibe coding is.
yeah. So, um, vibe coding is sort of what I was describing before, but put more specifically, like how a person just gets into a workflow, gets into like understanding a process really well. And it came from, I forgot which one of these AI, thought leaders from OpenAI or wherever, but like you get a vibe inside of you, like, oh, I get it. I understand what that automation needs to be or what that process needs to be. Um, and you just literally using natural language, you just type it in, right? Like I'll give you, because we have a video game crowd here too. So we have, going back to our Asian population. We have a lot of Asian population groups, and we wanted to engage some of the elderly population there, as well as like some of their kids who are actually not that young anymore either. And we vibe coded them a video game that was just a very easy, it's just like nostalgic of Koreans in the 1980s coming to America. And it had like, again, I don't really speak Korean, but it was like it was able to do that. And kind of like I had, just through feeling of like what this should be, what are the users like what are and again, it's just creating software through AI is ultimately what it is, but using natural prompts. And so the point is, like, we hire these young people to go out there and start again, like what do going back to the food restaurant analogy, what do the people ordering the food, what do they want to eat? Like, you go take their order and make the first dish, right? That's vibe coding. Take the order, make the first dish, keep doing it until you get it right, and then come back, right? Now that's great, and it does work. But I think going back to like the point Tony made, right? There's a lot going on under the hood versus to do that properly and actually to do it well. And then, when you make it a little bit more complex to beyond just, okay, make me a Pac-Man game or whatever, which like any of these tools can do in like 1 minute now. But make it that, and then, oh, well, now you need to access the data, and now you got to do that, and now you got to, 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 right? And like once these things build up, then the application is more complicated. Also, the way you use the AI to build the tools, right? There's ways to prompt it. There's different models. So if you don't really understand, other than just saying, well, Claude Code is really cool. I saw a bunch of Instagram stuff on it, whatever. And I'm just going to put everything into Claude Code and like whatever, like YOLO, right? Like that's sort of like you don't have any of the first principles. So I think that we do see that too. And we're trying to figure out, right, how do we teach people who um, are able to kind of understand first principles, but then still move fast and prototype quickly. And what we've often found is like one of the things I believe in terms of that sort of software creation, especially for customized use cases. Even like we have folks doing video content creation for like low end marketing materials, YouTube channels for some of our medical groups, different things. And like I hired a film major out of college because I feel like his prompting for the top like Google's Veo AI video model, it's like way better than me just saying, well, I'll make a video. I don't know anything about aspect ratios and all the stuff that like even in the Google prompting guide, it says like basically you had to talk like a film director, right? And I don't speak like that. So some of it is like having the tradesmen, if you will, use these tools, have them learn about the tools, but then have they are actually very intentional about their prompts and the words they use and the way they think about like building some of these solutions. We found that to be sort of interesting.
Yeah, and I think you were speaking David's language there, by the way. A lot of overlap. Man, there's so many directions you can take this conversation. I don't want to be too long-winded. I think we'll go for a few more minutes. Um, um, but maybe we could zoom out for a second. And one of my questions is, how do you how do you each kind of plan for the future in this really rapidly changing environment? Is it possible to make a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan or even a 1-year plan? Whoever, if anyone wants to take it, or maybe it's just more, it can be more rhetorical, but that's something, um, that
I'll
occurs to me. Mhm.
I,
yeah, I'll
Go ahead.
I'll field this one and
Mhm.
talk highly of our team. I'm not going to say myself, just say our team. Um, when we first started the business, we had to make a few bets. Like we were a really small team, um, and our bets were on um, rapidly developing technologies to increase at a expected pace, hardware innovation and stuff like that. And we hit the stride. Like if you're thinking about surfing, like we saw the wave, we planned for it, we hit the wave at the exact right time. And now, we're thinking about, okay, we're riding the wave, but what are we going to do after this? Um, I think that the most you can do is, yeah, I think the takeaway from this conversation should be focus on your craft, find those competitive moats that aren't rooted in, menial digital labor. Um, but there's still value. Like everything Anand just said, like he's offset eng headcount with way more job creation in areas that we wouldn't have had before. So it's really cool to hear that. And on our end, originally I'd tell you that our expectation was we'd keep our engineering headcount pretty static, throughout. And then with the new AI coding tools, we'd be able to keep it completely static. And I'd tell you that we were completely wrong on that because what happened is with the tooling, we were able to move at a higher pace, but so was everybody else. And so just to keep up, we had to continue hiring to get these minds kind of focused on the next problem and maintaining our customer base. Um, so in terms of anticipation, like, hey, you can make a bet, it could look great, and it might work out for a little bit at a time, but especially when it comes to software development, it's so circular. I actually think of it a lot like fashion because uh, like stuff that will come out, like I'll read the tech news or tech blogs and they'll be like, oh, we came up with this new like approach. And I'm like, that happened 15 years ago and then we scrapped it because it was a bad idea. But let's see how this plays out. And so it'll play out for like a few months and then they'll rediscover why it was a bad idea. So I don't know if there's like an exact planning for that you can do for 5 years at this point, but you can definitely spot the trends and then just think about, what builds in the competitive moat. These days, hardware, high risk, high value services like medical, and then highly creative fields like David's, like those are all very safe fields, I think. Whatever headwinds you see right now will be kind of overcome by the fact that people will just increase the volume of work that they do.
I noticed you did not say financial services as a
Well,
safe
Jeff, I hate to
industry.
break this to you, man. I spent this weekend on Claude Code or whatever, and um, I've replaced you. That's not true.
Yeah.
Listen, like there is something to be said about delegation, right? I don't do everything myself. Otherwise, we even have our own lawyer, right? Like I don't do the legal work for our company. Why?
Right.
From a bandwidth perspective, from both, mental and emotional bandwidth perspective, like I can't deal with that, right? And let's say I've got assets I need managed. I'm not doing that. I don't have time. Even if I had a fancy dashboard to look at, that's great. Now I have a fancy dashboard to look at, but I still want to be able to call up Jeff and be like, hey, what's happening? What do you see in the market? Because I don't have time to pay attention to it. So, we all have our limits, and that's why I don't think AI is replacing us anytime soon.
We've got some time. That's comforting.
For
Go ahead, David.
for my thoughts about like how you make a a plan for yourself, like 5 years out. I think you really have to just focus on like, how do I be useful and how do I be productive? And to not plant your feet and cross your arms when these tools come along. You know what I mean? Be curious. Like
Mhm.
they may work, they may not, but be curious as to what is happening. Um, and try to, you don't have to use everything, but like if there's something that helps your workflow, helps you be more efficient, then why not use that? Um, as a creative, I think, the most important thing is to like, create like not just like focus on like the repetition of the technical aspects of the job, but like really double down into your own creativity as a human. And
Mm.
like one of the best things that I ever got taught as an animator was I was really struggling with this idea, and I was I was trying to work it out in the tool, and I had a mentor, and he was like, "Step away from the computer." And I was like, "All right." And he's like, "Close your eyes. Imagine in your head like what you want this to look like, and really form it."
Mhm.
And like, and he's like, "And spend some time with that." And I was like, and that was one of the best lessons I ever had as an animator or creative, which is to like figure out this cool idea in my head. And then all it took really, then it was just a technical exercise to like get it out onto paper or into 3D.
Mm.
Um, and so, these tools are going to change, like things are happening rapidly. Focus on your own ability to be creative, because other humans want to know what you have to say as a creative person. That's ingrained in us, I think, as human beings, and I don't think that's going to change.
That's great. Um, that's a fairly positive, optimistic tone, and maybe a good place to end. But I think a lot of folks do have, back to the fear question. And if you zoom out, like, what is your greatest fear as pertains to AI? Maybe not necessarily in your respective industries, but do you have, however you want to take that. And it doesn't have to be completely existential. We can be short of that, of the AI taking over, unless you want to go there.
Me?
Anyone can, in any order. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Oh, only thing I worry about with AI is that I feel like it is a great tool of almost outsourcing thought in some ways. And I just worry that humans will lose their ability to think.
We'll get lazy.
Because just like our muscles, if we don't use our brains, it will also atrophy.
Mhm.
However, I really use it like because I love just like consuming massive amounts of knowledge and information. In fact, I do it more with AI now.
Yeah.
I'm always asking AI, what does that mean? What is that? Tell me about this. Tell me about the history of this.
Totally.
And so it's this constant stream of information to me. So I feel like it's helpful, but you could also use it the other way where you just stop thinking at all, and let it do it's thinking for you.
Yeah.
And I get afraid of that, as on an existential level.
Anyone else want to take that one? Or should we stay mostly positive?
I don't want to be. I don't want to say anything too negative. But in terms of just fears, there are bad actors also using these tools. And so for all kinds of things that one could imagine. So I think AI safety in general, it is a topic I'm very interested in. The AI we've been talking about, again, is sort of a lot of it is like it's processing information, coming up with best insights, those sorts of things in general. But AI largely still can't complete actions right really well. Like it can't. I mean, until you start thinking about newer types of AI models, like world models and robots and all kinds of stuff like that, right? Like I think that's um, areas that people are actively working on and could be scary. I think there's a lot of potential there, but I think um, short of that, I think a lot of the AI really here is like I mean, like Tony said, you can make a dashboard of telling you all this stuff, but it's not going to make the trades and do every. I guess it could, but like, especially for things that are not fully computer based, that the chances that it's not, it can't complete the task basically. So, um, things that are like stuck on our computers or sort of in software and all that, I think those are more areas of that it can leverage. But I think that people are trying to use these tools for all sorts of other bad stuff, we'll call it. And I think just more, need to be very careful on that.
Jeff, I want to save my negativity for an entire webinar on just negative AI things to say.
Fair enough.
That would be a full hour at least.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, I think we should probably convene monthly. Shall we? So let's get our calendars out. Well, that's probably a good time to pause and let folks get back to their day. But this has been a great discussion, and I really appreciate you all taking the time. Those who joined in and my panelists. Feel free to, Anand, David, jump in if you have, and Tony, if you want to leave audience with anything. Otherwise, we will try to do it again soon.
Great.
Maybe go ahead, Anand.
No, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.
I really enjoyed the conversation and hearing both Anand's and David's perspectives. It was fun. So thanks for having us, Jeff. Thanks for getting this all organized.
It was fun. Thank you all.
Yeah, this was fun. Great to meet you guys.
Thanks, David.
Nice meeting you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye, everyone.